Hello and welcome back to Hot Topics and Hypnotherapy. If you're just joining us, we have a very special guest, David John Oates from Australia and reverse speech technology. So we're having a fascinating conversation. We did have a couple of questions come up from the audience at break. A good basic starting question is, how did you stumble on this, David?
Well, I heard about backward messages in rock and roll back in the early 80s. And I was running a halfway house for street kids, and some of my teenagers were playing their records backward on the old turnstiles and getting quite scared by what they heard. And they came to me and asked me what I thought about it, and I laughed.
Like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, John is Dead.
And Queen, No One Bites the Dust, some fairly classic hits. And so they asked me what I thought about it, and I just rubbished the whole thing. Thought that's ridiculous. But I'm an electronics buff, and I went home that night and rewired a tape player and started running these records backwards, and I was hearing what the teenagers claimed they heard, and I was quite stunned, and I was really intrigued. I was wondering, well, how is this getting there? There was no manipulation of the soundtrack. It was occurring purely by the way the song was sung forward.
So it wasn't, they didn't purposely do that?
No.
Now the John is Dead one, or Paul is Dead, that one was purposeful, right?
That one was purposely done.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
that one was a publicity gimmick, according to my beliefs anyway.
Right.
But see, what that publicity gimmick did was it got teenagers around the world playing records backwards, trying to find these hidden messages.
Okay.
And they found other messages that the Beatles hadn't put there.
Right.
And then this big woo-woo sort of conspiracy theory arose. How are they getting there? And people claimed it was the devil. And then when I started my work, it was one thing to find it in music, but then I accidentally stumbled across it in human speech a few months later. And it really started to raise a whole bunch of questions for me. If this is occurring in speech and music, then could it not be a natural function of the human mind?
Of the subconscious mind?
Because the musicians aren't doing it intentionally.
Right.
And when I started taping Friends and finding out things they did last night and the week before and hidden secrets that they didn't want revealed, I started to realise this is really something very significant here.
Right.
And,
let me recap, in case someone joined us just now.
Right.
That as we're speaking forwards, our subconscious is giving a running dialogue of how we feel about what we're speaking forwards. And here, another interesting facet that I learned from you was that two people can read the same statement and come out with two different reversals.
Correct.
So it's not just the consonants reversed.
Right.
It's some other way that the subconscious is communicating in reverse in their speech.
Well, it's the sounds of speech that are causing it. Now, see, two people can say the same sentence, but their voice intonations are going to be different. They're going to put different emphasis on different words and different sounds. And so it's the way the sound is spoken at that precise moment is captured on tape that creates a reversal.
Now, we talked about earlier that this is has, I think, potential to change society if you can not suppress the truth. That if public figures, especially political figures, are telling us something, but yet their reverse speech, their subconscious mind is communicating a different feeling about it. If that was known to us, or we had a mechanism to reveal it, it could change society dramatically.
Sure.
And the last time you visited us, you played us a wonderful piece from Bill Clinton's era.
Right.
So tell us about that piece.
All right, well, this is his famous denial, where he says, I did not have sex relations with that woman, Monica Lewinsky.
Right. So I did not have sex with that woman.
So let's just run this forwards. Okay. Here we have the forwards. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry about that. Right. Okay, here we go.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time.
Okay, now I'm going to run a small section backwards. I'm going to run it at 3 speeds.
So he says, let me just recap. So basically he's being pressed, right by the politician. Did you or did you not have sex with that woman? But which, by the way, I thought was none of their business. I just want to say that in terms of my liberal beliefs. That's none of their business. But they were forcing him to answer this question that he did not want to answer.
He did not want to answer.
And he was doing everything he could, but they had finally pinned him into a corner and said, yes or no, did you have sex with that woman? right?
And he says, no.
He says, I did not have sex with that woman. Now let's.
Okay, now run it at 3 speeds and see if you can hear him say, I hate to say yes. Here we go.
I hate to say yes. I hate to say yes.
You all hear that?
Yep.
So he hates to admit. There's no way he's going to admit, I'm not going to say yes. There's no way I'm going to say yes.
Right, and that's what I like. That caught me and stuck with me the first time you presented that, because he didn't say, yes, I had sex with her. He's saying how he feels about being forced to make that statement.
Exactly
I
correct.
hate to say yes, and that's what the subconscious is doing, is expressing itself.
Exactly correct.
And here's why I like this, and because I like this, I like you, right? Because you're this, you're the guy who this, you're this, and I've never, met you outside of just hearing your lecture.
No.
We, strongly believe in the subconscious and that how it expresses itself in many ways, in handwriting. Okay? And if it doesn't have a chance to express itself enough, it shows up in body syndromes, in physical symptoms, in all kinds of ways. And this is just another example of how the subconscious needs to express, that you can't suppress its expression.
Right.
And so it's just such a fascinating concept. Now, another clip I know you have queued up because one of the audience members asked about it. In a developmental theory, in psychology, the belief is that as babies develop, that their comprehension precedes their production, meaning that they can understand things before they can say it. Right? Now, what you've come up with is this unbelievable sort of validation of this notion with reverse speech. Tell us about that.
Right, well, basically what I've discovered is that children are speaking in reverse before they speak forwards. From as early as 4 months of age, they're putting simple single words together in their backward speech. By the time they're 12 months of age, before they're speaking forwards, they're actually putting 3 or 4 word sentences together and communicating their needs. So my theory is that language development begins in reverse before it does forwards. And this is in keeping with a lot of accepted theories of child development, that cognitive functions develop backwards before they do forwards. Children will often crawl backwards before they crawl forwards.
Interesting, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, of course, they're doing sign language with kids now, so they realize, and these kids can talk, they just can't verbalize. That part of their brain hasn't gelled yet. So go ahead and play us what you got.
Okay, so here's a clip. This is my daughter in the bathtub, and she's 12 months of age, and she's trying to pick up a cup. She can't pick it up. And so she reaches out to me for help. So let's hope the levels are loud enough for this. And coming up now. So that's the normal sounds.
Just babbling, kind of.
And she says in reverse, my name, David, help me. See if you can hear this. And I'll play it one more time for those who might have missed it. Can you all hear that?
So she's reaching for something, can't reach it, and she says,
and she wants, David, help me.
Help me.
So there we have, at 12 months of age, she's saying my name, David.
Right.
And she's showing that she's really comprehending and understanding, and she's reaching out for help. She wants help in the bathtub.
Right. And I'm sure 13 years later, she had an entirely different reverse message for you.
30 years later, she wouldn't let me near her with a tape player.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, think about the ramifications for parents on this deal, right? I mean, I missed my window, but for those of you that still have them at home, this could really be, where were you last night? Wait a minute. Where were you last night?
Yeah, right.
So, all right, now here's the slam, okay? I mean, I love this, and I'm trying to sell this to anyone who will listen, right? And here's the slam, and I'm sure you get all the time too, is that it is reversed.
Right.
People say, oh, you're just making something out of those reversals, right? You're just hearing what you want to hear out of those reversals. So, and I say, well, no, because the whole concept makes sense to me.
Right,
but I could, again, because I want it to be true so badly,
Yeah.
I could be hearing it. Well, how do you respond to that criticism?
Well, the fact is we've done blind tests where we've played soundtracks to independent subjects, and they can hear the reversals without being told what they are. So if this was just us projecting into the gibberish, anything we want to hear, then it couldn't be heard independently. Different people listen to the same soundtrack in an independent situation would not hear the same phrase, and that doesn't. And we've shown that the same phrase can be heard independently by different.
Interesting. Okay, great.
People. When I do my lectures, I'll often play reversal without telling the audience what the reversal says, and in majority cases they can hear the phrase. So if you're just projecting into the gibberish, then different people listen to the same track wouldn't hear the same phrase. So and also if it's just random projection, how can I find out names of people's friends in reverse speech? How can I find out what they did last night? How can I find out intimate details about their lives? It's because reverse speech is real and is communicating this information that we can find it out.
Have you conducted like blind studies to support your arguments, and do you publish these? And, and is it on your website?
Yeah, they're on my website.
Which is reversespeech.com.
Reversespeech.com,
right.
And there's several blind test studies up there in the reference library that you can go and read.
All right, so now the next thing is, like when you were here 12 years ago, the first time you were here, you had little tape recorders.
Oh, yes.
And we were selling little tape recorders that had the ability to go forward and backwards. Well, now we have all this stuff, right? Computers, right. And I know I told people around here that you were coming, and one of the gals that works for me, she goes, oh yeah, she sent me a download of just something that goes, that easily reverses stuff, right? So what technological advances now are making it easier for people to explore this technology?
Oh, well, I think the development of our software has been the most exciting step forward. It makes reverse speech very, very easy to hear, very easy to research. It'll play the tape forwards and backwards. You can vary the speed it up or slow it down. We're developing an app for iPhone right now, which will turn the iPhone into a little mini reversing machine.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
if you could get it to do it live, in real time.
Oh, well, speech
cool
recognition. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how are you doing on that?
No, we've made no advances.
Because last time, you talked about if the gibberish reverse is different than speech patterns, that there's waves that are recognizable, and that you were looking at software that would just quickly find the waves and reveal the speech without the laborious task.
Unfortunately, we've made no further progress in that area, unfortunately.
No, okay.
Sorry.
All right. All right, well, you know what? We're going to take one more short break, and stay tuned. When we come back, I have a lot more questions for David John Oates on reverse speech technology.
Well, I heard about backward messages in rock and roll back in the early 80s, and I was running a halfway house for street kids, and some of my teenagers were playing their records backwards on the old turnstiles and getting quite scared by what they heard, and they came to me and asked me what I thought about it. And
in Hypnotherapy, if you're just joining us, we have a very special guest, David John Oates from Australia, and reverse speech technology. So we're having a fascinating conversation. So we did have a couple questions come up from the audience at break. A good basic starting question is, how did you stumble on like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, John is Dead, and
Queen, No One Bites the Dust, some fairly classic hits. And so they asked me what I thought about it, and I just rubbished the whole thing. Thought that's ridiculous. And but I'm an electronics buff, and I went home that night and rewired a tape player and started running these records backwards, and I was hearing what the teenagers claimed they heard. I was quite stunned, and I was really intrigued. I was wondering, well, how is this getting there? There was no manipulation of the soundtrack. It was occurring purely by the way the song was.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Topics.